Welcome to everyone to our WAHHI 2024 author series. We are so excited to introduce you to Jennifer Coburn, who is the author of Cradles of the Right. We know you have busy lives, and we're glad you took the time to visit us on WAHHI today. But first, I want to introduce Jenna Porter, who, as always, will be co-hosting today. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. We moved, so I have a new backdrop finally.
I was gonna say, yeah, how did the move go?
Well, we had, of course, we had to install bookcases we moved to Tide Point from Windmill Harbor, and the first thing we had to do was get bookcases installed. So I kept thinking one of the highlights would be that I'd end up with a better backdrop than I'd had before. But it went very well. I advised everyone who's intimidated by a move to hire a senior mover. I hired a woman named Trish Yurimovich, if anybody wants to know about her, but she was an absolute angel, and she came to the house and we put stickers on the furniture that wasn't coming, and 2 days later Jarman Auction came and said, we'll take that and we'll take that, and we don't want that, and hauled stuff out of the house. And she came a couple days in advance, packed up everything. I didn't pack a box.
Really?
I didn't pack a box. She was the day of the move. They packed us, and everything that had blue stickers on it went to the garage, and Habitat for Humanity picked that up later. And perfect. Everything without blue stickers went into the truck. And we got here and unpacked everything. We like by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, everything was moved, and they started unpacking. And she and her helper Karen unpacked basically everything the next day, and we had no boxes by Monday.
Oh wow, we still have them in my attic, our boxes.
Yeah, we don't have a box. Well, when you move into a place with less space, you just you just don't have boxes.
Well, we did too here, but actually we didn't, but it's a whole different. We used Liberty Auction, which was equally wonderful when we moved my mom, and you just give them things and they send you a check after they auction off the items. So that was very helpful too.
They were so terrific. We also inadvertently had some stuff go to the auction house that shouldn't have gone, and they very politely returned it. We got a chair and some goblets back that they had been taken by accident. I mean, Jarman was fabulous to work for, and the whole service for Trish Yurimovich to help me move was $3,800. So wow. I think, a lot of people think, well, I can't afford to get help. It's too expensive. I thought it was going to cost much more to get the help we needed, because my husband and I both have mobility issues. But so it went really well. I was so glad when it was over,
Yeah. And when you've moved as many times as probably some of us have, you're just like at the end of your rope a little sooner than you used to be. But and at this point, we've probably all accumulated a lot more than we used to have. So,
and Bobby, it's terrific you're talking today, because one of the questions I get the most from people I meet who ask about the author series is how we pick books and authors. And I keep telling people on these webinars that you pick the books and authors, and you occasionally check with me on what I think, but you're the lead person there. So would you describe, what you do to kind of source authors and how people should reach out to you if they have a book they'd recommend?
Always, right. We're never sure what their schedule is, or what I always read. I will be honest, I don't read the entire book, but I will read a good part of the book to see if it fits what everybody likes, the historical fiction. I look at a book page, which is I get it through Hoopla at the library, or you can get a magazine, and it has that. I have just discovered a site, maybe Jennifer knows it, HNS Conference. It's all historical fiction, and I just found a couple of authors there. And then I just go to Goodreads, or if somebody has something, and I've been in touch with her agent, with Katie Bennett and Kathy Katie. And then I go to Pat Conroy. Sometimes they have one of the, I won't tell you what, but in next year we have a gentleman coming that I discovered at the Pat Conroy Center. I know Jonathan there, and so I'll just say, hey, send me anybody you think is neat. I don't know, maybe some of you have read One Good Mama Bone. That came from there. One something I was, and I just love to do the research part, you know, and find out how they got into that, as I was talking a little beforehand to Jennifer about, you know, just the neat historic, how they pick their ideas and research it and everything. So that, and when some people, you know, if somebody reads a really good one with a new author, we also, you know, up and coming, we're going to be using some local authors that are somewhat historical fiction, but it's always good to bring in a local author or an up and coming author who is, the other one is Pam Weber, who I heard at the library. That's of all places. And she wrote a wonderful book. And so she'll be coming, I say next year. Yeesh. So that's how I kind of research. And that's part of my favorite part, is to just delve into all of it.
Well,
So
we also have Greg Jarrett coming later this year.
right.
And his
And
wife, Kate, is a member of WAHHI, and they live on the island. And
mhm,
she recommended his book to us called The Trial of the Century. And it took me a while, frankly, to get around to reading it. But then I thought it was really good because it's so interesting that the Scopes trial on evolution
mhm,
happened 100 years ago, you know, in the 1920s, 100 years ago. And here we are with the same kind of issues around book banning and what can be taught in schools. And
right.
you know, I thought it was very well written, and I'm looking forward to the discussion we're going to have with Greg, but it's also very relevant for today's times. And I think that's one of the things that, Bobby, that impresses you and I when we think about books, is we want books that, you know, help us not just think about the past, but reflect on what's true today, and how the past can help inform our current, you know, life. And we also have The Jury of One, which is by a local author who
Mhm.
we met and who we've had on before. And I love my book group at Windmill Harbor. Loved that book so much. Some people said it was the best book group discussion we've ever had. When
Yeah.
you go on Amazon, you don't see a lot of reviews and, you know, sales for Jury of One, but oh my gosh, it is a great book with kind of
And
multi-layered book.
one of the, I can't rely on those, because I'll go and see and they'll say, well, you know this and you know that. And I thought, oh my gosh, I think I just read the best book, you know, not randomly. I don't know which book. So I can't usually, I don't like to go to those, because I just, for whatever reason, don't seem to see eye to eye with some of the reviews. I love pretty much everything. If I'm doing this, it's something that has interested me and a couple of other people that I throw it through. But I have read, I can think of two that I read that I didn't think would be the right fit. So, and like I said, I will be upfront. I don't read the whole book unless we choose it, and then I try to read it. But just to get a feel for the writing and the point, the theme, and all that before I really make a final decision.
So people who are interested in recommending books, you know, they might know the author, they might not, but think that it would be interesting to be exposed to our WAHHI membership. Please
Mhm.
feel free to send an email to you, Bobby,
Please
and you're
do.
in the directory, Bobby
Mhm.
Helbig, or myself, Janet Porter, and we'll be glad to follow up and see. We also try to get best well-known authors. And, you know, Bobby did me a huge favor last year by getting William Kent Kruger from Minnesota, who is my famous author. Some authors like Kristen Hanna and those who are on bestseller lists are tough to get, but we try. And
We are still trying, wink, wink. I'll just keep that
on
under
Kristen
wraps.
Hanna, yeah,
We'll
that would be
see.
terrific.
That would
Um,
be, I don't know how many of you've read her new book, but we'll see.
so I just want to remind people that the calendar year for WAHHI starts June 1st, runs June 1st through May 31st. And so we have all new officers starting June 1st. You voted on them earlier in the year. And the board and council is going to have their first meeting next week, the new board and council.
Mhm.
The good news is there's a lot of people returning, you know, like Debbie Gorski, our president, who's
Mhm.
going to be serving a second term, and Linda Armstrong, and Linda Jackson's still active. And so there's a lot of returnees, but we have also had a lot of new members step up into the new roles. And so
Oh,
that's
awesome.
terrific.
That's
Yeah,
great.
that's
Yeah.
terrific. But if you haven't renewed your membership, you need to do that. So,
Yes.
because your membership starts June 1st. So if you haven't renewed your membership, be sure to go to the WAHI website, and that explains how you do that. So with
And
that,
once,
Bobby,
I was just gonna say, and once you do that, take a look around and see what some of the interest groups are. I don't think we really technically sign up quite yet, but go through the website and take some time to go through it and read some of the things that might interest you as sign up comes, and that, you know, for if you're new to it, or there might be some new ones and ones that you didn't want to do and now you might want to do. So take a look at the interest groups as well.
So Bobby, I'm going to sign off so you can get started with and start our webinar.
All right. Are we going to enter the so we are excited to introduce you to Jennifer.
Jennifer, we'll have you sign on later. I'll call when I introduce you, you can sign on. Okay.
I'm going to just
Thank you, Jennifer.
Jennifer Coburn is the author of Cradles of the Reich. And as I said, we know you're always busy, but this is fun. I saw her actually twice before she came to Indigo Run, and she's the USCB author series. So we're delighted to have her here. And that's, I mean, we kind of already did our chatting, so I don't know if you want to bring Jennifer on and get her going. She's the author of, oh, you're going to read that part. Sorry, I went off script. So go ahead, Janet, if you want to come on and start your, and I will sign off and see you at the end, and enjoy. And don't forget, ladies, if you have a question, please feel free to put it in the question and answer, and Janet or Nancy or I will see and try to get that question answered while we're chatting.
Thank you, Bobby.
Okay.
So welcome to our 37th WAHHI webinar. This is the 37th one in 4 years. We started the author series in March of 2020, and it was a hit, and actually May of 2020. And so, you know, we are now thrilled to be presenting to you Jennifer Coburn, who will be discussing her latest book, Cradles of the Reich. Just to remind you, this is a webinar and not a meeting. So we can't see or hear you. You can see and hear us, those who have us who are panelists. However, we want to hear from you. So at the bottom of your page, there's at the bottom of your screen, there's a toolbar, and you can see where it says Q&A. And so please feel free to send in questions. Somebody already has a question that I'm going to be asking of Jennifer in just a minute. So let me introduce Jennifer to you here now. Jennifer is the author of Cradles of the Reich, which is a historical novel about 3 different women living in Nazi Lebensborn breeding program at the start of World War II. This is a story about World War II that has not been told, and you will learn a lot from the program. She has published a mother-daughter travel memoir, We'll Always Have Paris, as well as 6 contemporary novels, and she's contributed to 5 literary anthologies. She lives in San Francisco with her husband, William, and their daughter, Katie, is in graduate school. When Jennifer is not going down historical rabbit holes, she volunteers with So Say We All, a live storytelling organization where she is a performer, producer, and performance coach. She is also an active volunteer with Reality Changers, a not-for-profit that supports low-income high school students in becoming the first in their families to attend college. She specializes with that group in helping people with college essay preparation and interview preparation. So with that, Jennifer, would you join us?
Yes, thank you for that nice introduction. I appreciate the invitation to be here and to speak with your members.
Yeah, and you're in California now. Where are you in California?
I'm in San Diego, which is the southmost point.
Yes, yeah. And are you deluged with rain right now?
No, no, not at all. It's warm and sunny.
Hello?
So
Hello?
let's start by
Hey, I'm
giving
on my
people,
Zoom.
Bobby,
Yeah.
please put on your, please.
Yeah.
Bobby, we can hear you. So let's give our WAHHI members some idea what Cradles of the Reich is about.
Sure.
Give them an overview.
From an overview, it's three very different women who meet at a Nazi Lebensborn breeding home, which was created in 1935, and it was a top secret program that lasted until the end of the war. The three women have different places in the Reich and different opinions of the Reich, and they are representative of the choices that Gentile Germans had in 1939. I have the resistor, which is Gundi, who is everything that the Nazis consider perfect. She's tall, she's blonde, she's beautiful. But what the Nazis don't know about her is that she is secretly pregnant with a Jewish boyfriend's baby. Then I have the bystander, which is Nurse Irma. And Nurse Irma, like a lot of Germans, just kind of wants to keep her head down and stay out of politics. And when she goes to work at the Lebensborn home, she feels like this is a good thing that I'm doing for my family, for my country, and for these young women. But as the months go on at the Lebensborn home, Irma starts to realize what this program is really about and what the Nazis' true agenda is. So she has a choice to make about whose side she is on. And then the third point of view character, which was the toughest one for me to write, was the Nazi true believer, which was Hilda. And Hilda is honored to be pregnant with a high-ranking Nazi official's baby. She's looking to claw her way up in the Reich, and she's excited about Hitler's new Germany. So tough point of view to write, but I wanted to include it so that we can kind of see what are the warning signs that a country and a person go through when they start to descend into madness, a cult of madness.
So let's start with what inspired you to write this story? Tell us your family's personal history and what led you to be intrigued by this topic.
Sure. I am a Jewish New Yorker, and I was raised in the 1970s and 80s. And when I was growing up, my father's family always used to share with me what their family's plan, what their parents' plan was for the children if Hitler were to cross the Atlantic Ocean and invade the United States. So my grandparents had three children. My father was a 2-year-old who was the neighbors downstairs in the two-family house that they lived in, they volunteered to adopt my father. They were a German family. They figured they would change his name and he would be safe. My Aunt Bernice was Gentile passing. So a Catholic church had a plan to hide 9 girls in a convent in upstate New York should the need arise. So that's what would happen to Aunt Bernice. Aunt Rita, on the other hand, had polio. So she walked with a profound limp. And even if righteous Gentiles like the Kiel family that lived downstairs or the local parish, even if they wanted to help, there was no saving my Aunt Rita. So this history, this looming threat really stayed with me throughout my childhood and haunted me. And I always wondered, could this happen again? And what would that look like? So then a couple of years earlier, maybe many of you on the webinar have seen the show The Man in the High Castle, which was a limited series on Amazon TV. And it was about what the world would look like in 1962 if Germany won the war. And on that show, one of the women mentioned that she was bred through the Lebensborn Society. And I thought, okay, that's a fictional element. This is a dystopian show. They do a lot of things on this show that did not happen, thank God. But I looked up Lebensborn and I found that it was in fact a real top secret breeding program that was launched by Heinrich Himmler in 1935 and lasted until the end of the war.
And so your family, which had immigrated to the United States in what year?
Oh, the 1900s. Like the 1905, 1910.
Okay. So they still believed that there was a threat that Hitler would make it to America and they would be in jeopardy as Jewish
Well,
citizens.
frankly, he nearly did make it. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
we were very close to losing the war, the United States.
Yeah, I have, but I haven't, I can't recall having read a book about Jewish families in the United States kind of developing alternative plans should the war end. And so I think that history's from your family perspective is very interesting.
Yeah, they definitely had a plan, an exit plan.
So then, since the Lebensborn Society was really top secret, how could you find out any information about it? Because I know you've done tons of historical research. So how did that work?
Well, as everyone knows, the Nazis were excellent record keepers, but they were also meticulous record burners. So they destroyed most of the documents about the Lebensborn Society. There was not a lot of information, but there were several nonfiction books and a couple of experts who specialized in this program, which was part of a larger propaganda campaign.
And I just want to say that you have incredible book reviews. I mean, I think some of the comments on that I've come up with, comments from people who've heard your speak have been amazing. So I want to read a couple of them. One person said, Jennifer is the most incredible speaker we've had in the 20 years of bagels and books. Cradles of the Reich was filled with information I never knew about, and she made it all come to life. And another reviewer said about another talk you did, this was by far the biggest turnout we've ever had for an author talk. Even patrons with limited viewing wanted to stay and hear the presentation. Jennifer made sure that everyone felt included and took time to engage with all the people that were affected by her story. So let's talk about the audience's reactions when you present. What do they find most compelling and interesting about your story? And what do they want to probe with you more and more about?
Well, like me, most people did not know that there was a breeding program. So that's the first thing. They're like, what are you talking about? There was a program where women were put in maternity homes and they gave birth, and those children were adopted by good German families. That was one element of the program. The second element of the program was the Nazis recruited blonde hair, blue-eyed young women to go live in a Lebensborn home and be available to have sex with Nazi officers. That was shocking. I think that one really blows people away because why? Why would you do this? You're a young woman and you're signing up to have sex with strangers in order to have a baby for Hitler, to have a child for the Reich. And then I think what people really drop their jaws over is the third part of the program, which is the expansion of the Lebensborn program in 1939, when it became a kidnapping program also. So the Nazis were able to breed 20,000 babies through maternity homes and brothels, basically. But then when the war started, the Nazis began instructing officers or soldiers to find racially valuable babies on the ground in countries that they invaded, kidnap those children, bring them back to Germany and place them for adoption with German families. And that was 200,000 children who were stolen through this program. So I think just the mere existence of this program is shocking. And then the fact that we don't really know about this. This is not something we've really heard about, is also quite surprising. And I have had the privilege of talking to a lot of people whose families were affected by the Holocaust. Either they were in Europe or they escaped to the United States, and they, like our family, were nervous about anti-Semitism. So it's been a real privilege to go around the country and talk to people about this program, help people become aware that this happens and it could happen again, and show what the early warning signs of the rise of fascism look like, so that we can, as good people, work together to prevent that.
And is there any national association or organization in the United States of people who believe they were products of the Lebensborn Society? And do you run into them at your talks where people say, I think my grandfather was adopted and he might be, a Lebensborn baby?
So in the United States, I met one Lebensborn baby. Well, he's not a baby, he's 80 years old now. And he called me when he saw there was an article in the San Diego Union Tribune, and he said, I am one of the last babies born to the Lebensborn Society. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? And he said, my mother was a teenager who signed up and lined up to have sex with Nazi officers, and my father was a Nazi pilot. And then he was adopted by a family. Then he moved to the United States, enlisted in the US Army, and married a Jewish woman. I just love it when karma comes.
Oh my gosh.
So, but most of the Lebensborn children, the grown Lebensborn children, are living in Europe now. And they have a group called the Lebensburum, and they get together every 5 years or so as kind of a reunion or a meeting or a conference to talk about the challenges of being raised as a Lebensborn baby. And then once they got together and tried to sue Germany for reparations, and Germany made an offer, and the Lebensborn children turned it down because they thought it was a lowball offer. But they do, yeah, so they do connect, but not a lot of Lebensborn babies here in the US.
Wow. Wow. I want to read another comment about the research you do. One library book member commented, Jennifer Coburn presented an engaging, incredibly well-researched history of the Lebensborn Society through Cradles of the Reich. Our audience was both fascinated and heartbroken by her description of the harsh realities of this time in history. So let's talk more about your research methods. I mean, where primarily were you able to get documentation that gave you some inside view of what was going on in the Lebensborn Society?
So a lot of the ways that you would think I would do research would be books and contacting experts and going through archival material. I did all of that, but what was most helpful to me was to speak with people who were there and ask them, what was it like to walk around Berlin the morning after the first night of the November 1938 pogroms that the Nazis called Kristallnacht. And the person that I talked to about that, he's 92 now, the person that I talked to was not Jewish. In fact, he was a member of the Hitler Youth. And that was very, very important for me to hear from him and ask him, how did you get sucked into this? I'm not judging. I really genuinely want to understand, because until we understand something, we cannot counter it. So for this next book that I'm working on, The Girls of the Glimmer Factory, I went twice as far down the rabbit hole. the research rabbit hole. And I traveled to the site of a former concentration camp, and I slept there for 4 nights. But one thing I want to backtrack to Cradles of the Reich. I contacted so many experts in these teeny little areas of mundane cultural details. Like those of you who have heard me spoke before know that I spent 4.5 hours trying to figure out that when men in 1939 Germany did their pants, I wondered, did they zip them, did they snap them, or did they button them? And that kind of thing is really hard to find. And I called a food historian. Like, I had no idea that was a job before I started this research. And I asked her, hey, I have this family eating rabbit stew, but it's April. Would that be something that they'd eat in the spring, or is it more of a hearty winter meal? And she said, oh yeah, we eat the stew all year round. Yeah, no problem. But your problem is where is they going to find where the rabbit when everybody knows that the rabbit hunting season ends in December? So I said, all right, well, it's a high-ranking Nazi family. Maybe the dad just shot the rabbit in April because he could. He doesn't have to play by the rules. And she said, yeah, that could happen. But in April, the little rabbits are just coming out of hibernation, and they're skinny, and their meat is going to be stringy, not good for the Hassenpfeffer rabbit stew. So I said, okay, Ursula, how about this? They shot the rabbit in December. They put it in an ice box until April. They thawed it out, and then they cooked the stew in April. And she said, oh yeah, that's plausible. So when you read Cradles of the Reich and you get to chapter 2, and there's one line of internal dialogue where Hilda says, smells like Mama is making rabbit stew. I wonder where she found a rabbit this time of year, much less one plump and juicy enough to make a good Hassenpfeffer. That was 7.5 hours of research. And that was the bulk of the research, because things like dates of battles and in invasions, easy. That's very well documented. Rabbit stew, not so easy.
One of our folks wants to know, how do you look for people who are food historians, particularly relative to German food in the 1940s? How do you eat? I mean, do you just Google that?
So the way that I find experts is I Google the subject area that I'm interested in, like German cooking during the war, German food during the war. And then I read academic papers and I see who those people have used as references. And then I start seeing the same names coming up over and over again. For example, when I needed an expert in Nazi propaganda, I knew that I should call Randall Bytwerk, a professor who is cited in almost every single academic paper about Nazi propaganda. So I thought, that's my guy. That's who I need to call. And then I just reach out to these folks, and I have been amazed at how accessible they are and how willing to help.
Wow, that is true. So I think the audience is now wondering, how long did it take you to write this book with you doing all this intricate research about, you know, how men's pants were buttoned or zipped, and the rabbit stew? I mean, how long did it take you to write this?
The book start to finish was 2.5 years, and I research as I write, because I don't know that I'm going to need to know about buttons until I get to the buttons. So I do some basic research on the program and the time, and that takes a couple of months. And then I start writing the story, and then I will stop, which is not a really efficient way of doing things. I have to say, I should probably leave a blank and say he blanked his pants and moved on and do the research later. But I'm very curious about this, so I stop, and then I go and become an expert on the history of the zipper.
Oh my gosh. So you just mentioned the next book that you're doing, which
Uh-huh.
also takes place during World War II.
Yes.
So, do you find that that period of time most intrigues you?
You know, I was at a dinner party about 5 years ago, and someone said, if you had a time machine, where would you go? And everyone around the table was saying, I would go to the Belle Epoque in France, and I would go to all of these wonderful places. And I said, I would go to Nazi Germany. And everybody said, what? You'd go to Nazi Germany? You're a Jewish woman. Why would you go to Nazi Germany? Because I just want to get an understanding of how that happens. What is in the air? What are the messages people are receiving all the time? What's happening in the schools? So that's the period I was drawn to first. I'm also really intrigued by the Gilded Age in New York. That fascinates me. And the 1950s in New York City as well.
And what is it about the 1950s in New York City?
Well, my mom was a single woman living in Greenwich Village in the 1950s, and she takes me on walking tours of her youth, and just listening to her talk about the things that she did, and she saw Edward Albee's new show in its first run, and she was a poor college student, so she was an usher at the door, and I don't know, it just she sounded, when she speaks about it, she sounds so happy and so free. And I want to go back with my mother and feel that energy from her again. So she tells me a lot of stories, and she's pulled me into that time. And if I had a time machine now, I would go back and be her roommate in 1959.
Right. And did you start out with historical fiction? I mean, was that your genre
No,
early on, or
no.
when did you realize that this is what feeds your soul?
So, Janet, I started out with romantic comedies, and I have 6 romantic comedies, and then I have this boppy travel memoir called We'll Always Have Paris, which follows my daughter Katie and me around 12 European cities. So the move to historical fiction about Nazis was not the next natural step for my career, but I just wanted to read a book about the Lebensborn Society. That's all I wanted to do. I wanted to learn about this period through a well-researched historical novel that looked at history through the lens of women's friendships. So I looked and I looked and I looked. I could find no novels. And thankfully, as an author, I have a lot of friends who are authors, and they kept saying to me, like, "Oh, well, why don't you write this book?" And a lot of them are historical novelists. And I said, I can't do that. And they said, yeah, you can. I said, I'm not qualified. And they said, neither were we. So neither were we at first.
Yeah.
So they gave me some tips on how to get started. And I thought, all right, let's give this a try. I just wrote the book that I wanted to read with a book club.
And so do you think you're going to stick with this genre? Because it seems to me that romantic comedies are a lot easier to write. I mean, you could probably pump them out faster than 2.5 years on Cradles of the Reich.
Well, yes, yes, and the book that I wrote that's coming out in January, The Girls of the Glimmer Factory. If anybody's on Goodreads, it is available to click on your want to read list, and you'll get a reminder when it comes out. But that book took twice as much research as Cradles of the Reich, because it was not only dealing with, I have the hiccups now. Not only dealing with German culture, but also Czech culture. So I had a German author, Bernhard Schlink, who was reading my manuscript for linguistic and cultural authenticity of Germany. And then I had my friend Marketa Hankova reading for Czech consistency. We called it our Czech. And then I flew out to the Czech Republic. Actually, I was there a year ago, and and did my research firsthand on the site, which
Wow.
I'll tell you all about when I come back to South Carolina, because I love talking to groups of readers.
Well, and we were talking before, Jennifer, that you'll probably be here in January.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah. So I know last time you spoke I think you spoke at Indigo Run, and we were talking about the fact that you also spoke at University of South Carolina at the Buford author series. So I'm sure you'll be back at both of those. So people should be on the lookout for you. So
Please.
Jennifer, thank you so much. I know you have to rush off to another engagement.
I
And
do.
we so appreciate you being patient with our rescheduling, and we look forward to seeing you with your new book in January.
I really look forward to seeing you all again in person. And thank you again for the invitation to come here and chat with your members. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Jennifer. And I want to remind everybody to please join us on July 11th to hear Julie Gerstenblatt, who she's going to be interviewed about her latest novel, Daughters of Nantucket, which I think you'll all really love. So we're closing a little early tonight. Have a great June, and we'll see you on July 11th. Bye-bye.